सलाम ने हुजूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम को बताया कि इसी रोज़ पारस में बगावत हुई और खुसरो इसमें मारा गया है और अब उसका बेटा उसकी जगह हुक्मरान बन गया है। अगले दिन जब यमनी एलची आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से मुलाकात के लिए आए तो आपने इन्हें इस बात से आगाह किया और इनसे कहा कि अपने आका नायब को इस बात की खबर दे दें। फिर आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, इसे बता दो कि मेरा दीन और मेरी सल्तनत खुसरो की सल्तनत से कहीं आगे तक पहुँचेंगे और मेरी तरफ से उससे कहना इस्लाम कबूल कर लो तो जो कुछ तुम्हारे पास है मैं उसे रहने दूँगा और तुम्हें तुम्हारे लोगों पर यमन में हुक्मरान मुकर्रर कर दूँगा।
The question of missionary activity in Islam has to be understood in the light of prophecy itself. The Quran says that we have sent prophets to all different spheres of time and space, and the word that is used for prophets in this sense is Anbiya or Nabi, who is an apostle, a prophet who brings a heavenly message to people. Then you have the second category of prophecy, that of a Rasul, a person who belongs to the higher category of prophecy, higher than that of a Nabi, who brings a special message that has to be spread, a special heavenly book that has to be brought to the attention of the people. Then you have the third category, which is the highest category, called Ulul Azm, the possessor of firmness and determination, which is even higher than that of Rasul. And according to the Islamic sources, there have been 7 such prophets who belong to the category of Ulul Azm, with the Prophet of Islam, Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ, as being the highest one. The Ulul Azm has a special task of bringing his message to people, and it could be ordinary people and it can also be kings and princes. When the Prophet sent his message to different people across Arabia and beyond Arabia, he was fulfilling the task of being Ulul Azm. In light of Prophet's task as the possessor of firmness and determination, a special task of making the dawah, of making invitations to non-Muslims and Muslims alike had been given. Surah 30th of the Quran asserts that God is making an invitation to all of the people of the world, to the whole of humanity, to live according to His will. So the prototype of all of the invitation to the spiritual path, to the path of God, has been made by, in the first instance, by God Himself. The Prophet himself emphasized invitation to those who are in need of the divine message and emphasized the Quranic ethos of Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahyan al Munkar, ordaining good and forbidding evil. This is a message that has to be spread across to the world. In an effort to construct a better livable society, it should be a good society. And the task of preaching goodness to the people around, within the Muslim world, within the community of Muslims, and across to the other world, is a task that has to be shared by all fellow Muslims. In order to capture the spirit of the missionary activity of the Prophet, one should look at verse number 25 in Surah 16 of the Quran, in which God says that, "Bring my message to the people across the world and preach them most beautifully and with wisdom, and argue in ways that are best and most gracious." The Prophet himself emphasized the importance of mission, the importance of making invitation and dawah to Muslims and non-Muslims alike. He said that he who enters without invitation is a thief, and hence the importance of dawah as a dialogical process in which the Muslims and non-Muslims alike are invited to understand Islam. If dawah, or inviting people to the message of Islam, is so important, that raises the issue of the Islamic ethics of dawah. The Prophet also said, "Laysa ad-din illa al-hub." There is no religion without love, and hence the dawah must be done with love and knowledge. A person who does dawah is called da'i, and he has to be a person of a higher level of knowledge and piety. He must understand the Islamic sciences, he must understand the Quran, its tafasir and ta'wil, he must understand the Hadith, the Sunnah of the Prophet. And now one cannot expect that everybody will be at the highest level of scholarship and the highest scholars in the world will be the only da'is. And hence the dawah takes place across different sections of society, amongst different social classes with different discourses, and people from the Islamic world participate in it. The Islamic ethics of dawah, of course, the utmost important thing is to not push people and do not make religion compulsory for people. And when people are brought the knowledge of Islam, it is important to realize for the da'i that one must not win an argument and lose a person's heart. The decision to switch to a different religion, to convert to a different religion, is not a decision that is taken at a cognitive level. It is taken at the level of the heart, which is why it is important for the da'i to realize that one must target the heart, the Ainul Qalb, or the Chashme Dil, the eye of the heart, that will awaken the faith of a potential believer.
حضرت آدم علیہ السلام سے لے کر نبی کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم تک جس قدر انبیاء تشریف لائے، ان سب کا یہی مشن تھا، دعوت اللہ، اللہ کی طرف بلانا۔ اس کے لیے کچھ اصول بھی ہیں، کچھ ضوابط بھی ہیں۔ اگر ان اصول اور ضوابط کو ملحوظ رکھ کر یہ دعوت کا فریضہ انجام دیا جائے تو نتائج بہت اچھے نکلتے ہیں، حوصلہ افزا نکلتے ہیں۔ ان اصول میں سے بنیادی چیز یہ ہے کہ جو اللہ کے دین کی لوگوں کو دعوت دے رہا ہے، اس کو دین کی سمجھ بوجھ ہونی چاہیے، اس کو دین کا علم ہونا چاہیے، وہ جاہل نہ ہو، ان پڑھ نہ ہو، اس کو قرآن اور سنت اور سیرت نبویہ کا پتہ ہونا چاہیے کہ نبی کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کو اللہ تعالیٰ نے دعوت دینے کے لیے کیا تلقین فرمائی اور کیا آپ کو رہنمائی فرمائی۔ اس سلسلے میں سب سے بڑی انتہائی اہم بات دعوت کے سلسلے میں وہ ہے جو قرآن کریم نے کہی ہے۔ اللہ رب العالمین فرماتا ہے، ادعو الی سبیل ربک بالحکمت والموعظۃ الحسنۃ۔ یہ دو چیزیں ملحوظ رکھنی چاہیے جو بھی نیکی کی دعوت دے رہا ہے۔ پہلی بات یہ، ادعو الی سبیل ربک بالحکمت، حکمت اور دانائی کو ہاتھ سے نہ جانے دے۔ نمبر دو، موعظہ حسنہ، میٹھا بول۔ نبی کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے ان دونوں چیزوں کو اپنایا، حکمت کو آپ نے اپنایا، دانائی کو اپنایا، اور آپ نے میٹھے بول کو اپنایا، خوبصورت اخلاق کو آپ نے ترجیح دی، تو آپ کی دعوت کامیابی سے ہمکنار ہوئی۔ تیسری چیز جو ہے وہ عفو درگزر ہے کہ اگر آپ دعوت کے دوران کسی سے کوئی ایسی بات محسوس کر رہے ہیں جو نازیبہ ہے، جو آپ کو گوارا نہیں ہے، تو آپ اس پر اپنے جذبات کا اظہار نہیں کریں گے، بلکہ تحمل اور بردباری کے ساتھ آپ اسے برداشت کرتے ہوئے दरगुजर करेंगे तो लोग ज़्यादा आपके हल्का बगोश होंगे। इसलिए कुरान करीम में अल्लाह रब्बुल आलमीन ने फरमाया, ए हबीब, अगर आप दुरुस्त मिजाज होते, अगर आप करख्त मिजाज होते तो लोग आपके इर्द गिर्द से छट जाते, आपके करीब ना आते। तो अल्लाह ताला ने हुजूर के हुस्न अखलाक की तारीफ़ की कि आप करख्त मिजाज नहीं हैं, आप नरम मिजाज हैं, अफ़्व दरगुजर करने वाले हैं। इसलिए लोग ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आपके हल्का बगोश हो रहे हैं। और यही चीज़ जो है, तीन बातें अगर सामने रखी जाए दावत के सिलसिले में तो यकीनन कामयाबी नसीब होती है। एक हिकमत और दानाई, नंबर 2 मीठा बोल, नंबर 3 अफ़्व दरगुजर। नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की एक छोटी सी मैं मिसाल देता हूँ कि हुज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम से एक शख्स ने कुछ मांगा, और किस तरीके से मांगा, माल गनीमत तकसीम कर रहे थे तो उसने चादर को बल देकर आपके गले में डालकर ज़ोर से खींचा, हत्ता कि आपकी ये गर्दन मुबारक की रगें सुर्ख हो गईं। सहाबा उठे कि उसको मारें। आपने फरमाया, मकानकुम, बैठे रहो, मैं जानूं और ये जाने। आपने उसकी तरफ देखकर कहा, क्या चाहते हो? उसने कहा, मुझे भी माल गनीमत दें। फरमाया, मांगने का ये तरीका तो नहीं होता जिस तरीके से तुम मांग रहे हो, खूबसूरती से मांगो, तुम्हें सब कुछ मिलेगा। और आपकी इस हलीमुत्तबी को देखकर कदमों पे गिरा और आपका सच्चे दिल से मानने वालों में से शामिल हो गया। तो उसने कहा, मैंने तौरात में पढ़ा था कि नबी आखिर ज़मान हलीमुत्तबा होंगे, बुर्दबार होंगे। इसलिए तबीयत की हलीमी और बुर्दबारी ये भी दावत की कामयाबी को हमकिनार करती है। अल्लाह ताला हमें तौफीक अता फ़रमाए कि हम इन उसूल पर अमल करें और दावत के फ़राइज़ को अंजाम दें और आखिरत की हम बहुत बड़ी अल्लाह की खुशनुदी हासिल करें। आमीन। व आखिर दावाना अनिल हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन वस्सलाम।
The discussion of freedom of religion in an Islamic context is a very important one, especially these days. And there are 2 points to be mentioned in this, 2 aspects of freedom of religion in an Islamic society or Islamic state. The first situation is in which there is one state, a society, which has multiple religious communities. You have Buddhists, Hindus, Zoroastrians and so forth living under an Islamic state or inside an Islamic society. In this situation, it is important that the adherents of different faiths can all practice their religion freely, number 1. Second, they should have the freedom of changing into another religion, the conversion. Number 3, they should have the choice of not having any religion at all. Especially in today's conception of human rights and so forth, these 3 points are frequently discussed. Having the freedom to practice one's religion, having the freedom to switch faiths, and having the freedom not to practice any faith at all. By and large, most of these things have been realized in Islamic history. In most periods of Islamic history, you've had Muslims who had the freedom to practice their own faith and allowed all the other religious communities to practice their faith as well. The conversions took place. Mostly conversions took place from other religions into Islam, but occasionally, quite rarely actually, some conversions took place into other faiths, or those people who reverted from religion and chose not to have any kind of religious affiliation at all. The second situation is in which you have one state with one state religion. And the freedom of religion in that type of state would mean that all of the sects, different sects belonging to that religious world, all have the freedom to practice their faith within the confines of the laws of those states. And in this as well, the Muslim world has remarkably has a record of all of different sects, different religious sects within the abode of Islam practicing freely. The Shias practice their faith, different branches within Shiism, different branches within Sunnism, different schools of thought continue to operate throughout the Islamic history. But today, modernity brings a special challenge because the modern statecraft has changed and people's expectations from the state itself have changed. The Quran in Surah number 42, verse number 48 says that we have not sent you as a guard over them. Your duty is just to convey the message. Other surahs of the Quran are replete with verses in which there is no compulsion in the matters of faith, and God has instructed the Muslims to leave people alone in the matters of faith. However, the Hadith has many elements in it that may seem conflicting to the Quranic spirit, but in reality they are not. One case in point is the Prophet ordered that all apostates should be slain. But at the same time, the Sahih Muslim, which is the source of this hadith, also narrates an anecdote in which a Bedouin from the desert who has a very high fever somehow superstitiously thinks that it must be due to his conversion into Islam. And he goes to the Prophet and asks for letting go of his pledge to Islam. The Prophet kept quiet. He came back again and asked the Prophet if he can absolve the pledge to Islam. The Prophet kept quiet again and did not allow so. Upon that Bedouin left the Muslim community in Medina, and when he left, no harm was done to him. The important question to realize is, especially in the Covenant of Medina, in which the Prophet is at once the Supreme Pontiff of God and also a statesman, that there are certain ideological underpinnings in an Islamic state, and the allegiance to the state and the society should be there. So you cannot allow different people who actually do not share in the ideological presuppositions of the state to jeopardize the security of others. Even in the modern state, one has to take an oath of allegiance with a flag. And if you give up your citizenship, you lose your right to participate in the civic and political life of their country. An Islamic community in the early days was more or less the same.